Hey, it's Nicole. Welcome back to the show. Today, we have an interview with Rob Mathews, Executive Director of the Entrepreneurial Leadership Institute at Ball State University. Yeah, that Ball State, our own Indiana Ball State University. Pretty excited. Mathews is a co-author of Design-Centered Entrepreneurship, the second edition, and he provides a research-driven step-by-step approach to creative problem solving. I'm excited to jump in right away.
Hey, if you're an entrepreneur who usually fast forwards intros just like this one, this is the podcast for you.
Hey, Rob. Welcome to the show from Indiana.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to jump in the way we do with every show. Tell me, how would you finish this sentence? You know you're an entrepreneur when?
It's a great question. You know you're an entrepreneur when you want to solve a problem so badly you can't sleep at night. It just makes your skin crawl.
Yeah.
So it's passion for me. One's passionate about something and they want to solve it. They want to help people solve their problem. They will go to the end of the earth to make it happen.
Give me an example of a time that you were up at night or maybe just wee hours.
So my colleague and I have a consulting business, and then we do things at Ball State. We help companies through Ball State Connections too, through the university. And one of the things we've been noticing is companies are really struggling, small and large, with transitioning people from like a front lines position to more of a leadership or supervisory position. What happens? Well, they promote someone who was really good at their job, front
Mhm.
lines, implementation, action orientation type of job. And so that person moves into that role and they've identified them because they're a performer. The problem with that can be that they may not be the right person for a managerial or a leadership role. So they get off on the wrong foot. A lot of times they actually get promoted out of the company because it doesn't go very well. Maybe they're not flexible enough. Maybe that affirmation that they got from the old job, they want to hang on to it, or they lose it altogether and it's hard. So they want to micromanage. The reason I bring that up is because there's a market need right now that is burning for that. And we want to help people with that. And we have helped a lot of people think through that because if you promote someone into a leadership role, they have to have a certain entrepreneurial flair about them, especially in today's marketplace, to innovate, to advance. You can't just sustain. That's not enough. And so for me, it kind of burns multiple itches on the leadership side of things. I really believe everything stops and starts with leadership. And on the converse, a fish rots from the head, right? So you have to have good leadership. And to me, my personal motto is that innovation equals great leadership equals innovation. So when you have that, you could see it and feel it. I'm passionate about helping people with that transition.
Rob, I'll tell you, that's something that we suffered from tremendously in one of my older companies when I was in the corporate world. A lot of M&A work. We'd bring in new companies, acquire a company. We would take the top performer, and say, oh, well, now you're the manager of that division. You're the manager of that side of the company. You're the manager of that site, that location. When I say top performer, maybe they were the top in the sales department. Maybe they were the top in something else. But when you look at them and you look back 6 months later and you go, well, they're not a leader. They were great at sales because that's what they were designed to do. That's how they're wired. But maybe they weren't the best leader. Maybe they weren't the best manager. But yet we did this time and time again. Like, it was insane. I guess my question for you is, how do you resolve when you bring in that person and you say, okay, this is going to be the manager because they've been there, done that? Is that language is what people like to hear below them sometimes. Well, I've been there, done that. I did the job. I did this. Yet we all know that Bill Belichick doesn't throw a touchdown pass every Sunday. We all know that.
I'm guessing that we know that, yes.
I don't know how to resolve that even in other organizations.
I think that you're missing a third option, and Rob's going to tell us this in a second. I think the other option is making sure that that top performer is either prepared with support. Like, so it's not just like preparation with training, but it's with support. So whether that's mentorship, whatever that is, because we have done it the way we've done it. So people are expecting, like, if I work really, really hard and I sell, I will get promoted. I will be recognized. Somebody up top will be paying attention. And certainly I'm getting everyone a gold star in their review. I think that the onus is on all of us as decision makers and leaders to say, okay, let's be thoughtful and make sure that they are not just prepared, trained, but then they're supported or mentored.
We have a leadership pipeline problem in general in this country. And we haven't really raised up the next generation of leaders, small companies, large companies, medium-sized companies, social businesses, community groups. We just haven't done a good job of that. And the fallout has been, we have a lot of what I would call worker bees who are doing a really good job. And, oh, we're just throwing them into the fire. And to your point, Nicole, we might train them. But if we're honest, we're probably not even doing that. Like, oh, it's a trial by fire. I'm going to walk you into the office and that's your training. So the 3 minutes it takes for the walk. Congratulations, pat on the back. The problem is there's not support because everybody's so busy. And that has just amplified over the last couple of years with the labor shortage. It's obvious to everyone. What we've noticed about 12 or 13 years ago, we started working with a trade organization out of Indianapolis, the North American Hardware and Paint Association. It used to be North American Retail Hardware Association. So they served retailers in home improvement space of independent dealers. So this ranged from a very small one-store operation that maybe did up $500,000 a year, up to chains that had 100, 120 locations and 2 to 300 million in revenue. So big range of players, but they all had the same needs. And they needed ingenuitive leadership, people who could help them build their business. One tool we like to use, and this isn't self-promotion at all, but it's a tool we use. Gallup has an assessment called the Builder Profile 10. And it does a really good job of two things: mining out the talents needed to build a business, to be entrepreneurial, whether it's for yourself or for someone else. And it also measures the top 3 like alpha styles, like role types for leadership. What's really unique about it is that you can actually measure against the general population and alpha entrepreneurs or corporate innovators, people who can build. We've had a lot of luck with using that in kind of saying, okay, there's more that you need to do, but this is a first step in how do we evaluate if someone wants to. I mean, the best question to say is, what do you love to do? If they love to stock shelves and wait on customers, then you need to balance that with, okay, a lot of that will go away. Not all of it, because you need a role model, but a lot of that will go away. Are you comfortable with that? And then I think another good question is, what do you think leadership is? Do you think it is command and control? Because that's not the right answer. It's working with people. It's coaching, showing a way, but saying, hey, you can also find your own way. This is just how I did it.
Yeah, phenomenal. Oh my gosh, I love that. Not only are you an entrepreneur, but you now are an entrepreneur of entrepreneurs. I mean, you are leading the way. How'd you know that this would be your life's work?
Oh gosh, my dad had 4 grocery stores and 2 hardware stores. He was just totally an entrepreneur. He's the biggest hustler I've ever seen in my life. Like, hey, I bought a Jeep last week, and then that led to buying 3 more. And then,
You mean we're brother and sister? Because that sounds like my dad's, except for the grocery stores.
well, and I sold 3 of the 4 Jeeps last week, because it's like, what? I didn't even see them. I mean, I didn't get to ride in them. And so I grew up with that hustle mentality, and people think, oh, it's a glorious lifestyle. I mean, you guys must have been super wealthy, 4 grocery stores, 2 hardware store. And it's like, we did okay. But actually what I noticed was the hustle and the grind, and it really taught me work ethic, almost to an unhealthy point. I mean, there's a point where like people say, well, if you love it and it's your passion, you should work 80 hours a week. I'm not so sure that's sustainable. You actually may bring about dislike of your business at some point, especially if things don't go perfectly. From an early age, I mean, I was buying and selling sports memorabilia and bats and gloves. Like I was just hustling. I'm like, hey, Dad, through the store, can you get an account with Rawlings? And, before he knows it, I'm like ordering stuff. And he's like, what's going on? And I'm doing my side hustles. So that was where it started. When I went to the university, I saw an opportunity to be a disruptor because everybody asked me, why in the world do you work at a university? Like, it doesn't even make sense.
I mean, it was on my mind, if I'm honest, now
Yes.
that I know so much about you.
It's a fair question, and I ask myself that often. So
Each time I walk in the door.
Every day I walk in here, I'm
Okay,
like, why the
I'm
heck
doing
am I
this
doing
today?
this?
I do ask myself that question often because people ask me. So it's, I get concerned, like, am I doing something wrong here? But there's really a couple of reasons. Number one, I like to disrupt. I like to challenge the status quo, which is what corporate innovators like to do. They like to say, hey, there's opportunity here. Why aren't we seizing it? I'd like to at least have an opportunity to explore it. The other piece of it, though, is frankly, we are raising whole generations of like high school students, K through 12s, who are told when, what, and how to do everything. And so they can't think for themselves. And it's not because they don't have the ability, it's because they have been so trained and rewired that way. I want to disrupt that. I want to be an influencer to these students, to people who are out of college, people who say, hey, I want a different way. I'm bored with working for somebody else, or I want a side hustle. That's what fuels me kind of on one side of things. And then I scratch my venture itch by having side hustles myself. And it keeps me kind of like I have the experience, like I can speak to something that I've lived. I've lived with my spine sweating at night about payroll or whatever, which is true. But I have a real passion for, okay, let's flip the script and get students to think differently.
Okay, so tell us, what's something people will be surprised to learn about you, the entrepreneur of entrepreneurs, somebody helped leading the way?
Oh boy. This sounds like vulnerability to me.
Yeah, it's tough on a business show, but we're going to go there as much as we can.
I've never said this publicly before, so you're the first. I had a retail business that didn't go very well, and it was a big investment, and it was a lot of risk, and I learned from the school of hard knocks. 20 years ago, I approached the business from what I would call an operations mindset. So everything was about the shelving, the placement, how we handled customers. So it was all about systems, processes, rules. And I thought I could build the perfect mousetrap. We were successful in some ways, but overall, it was a struggle. And it wasn't really my passion. It was my dad's passion, if I'm being honest. That's something budding entrepreneurs have to think about is whose passion is this really is really important. And family business people, I think we can all relate to a certain degree. The three of us is a struggle because it gets transferred to you, like the passion and then the expectations. And sometimes the parent, the grandparent, the aunt, the uncle, they don't even know that they're pushing this. That was something I had to get over. But here's what I did. I hung on too long. Because of pride. I didn't want to be embarrassed that I had failed. But what you start to learn is failure is actually a learning opportunity. It's always relative, like I got out of it. Okay, I didn't lose my life. The funny thing is, it led to all kinds of connections that would be future business. It's just weird how stuff works. My message I really wanted to touch on was, do you approach a business from a people standpoint? What I mean is, does it start with solving a problem for some group or groups of people that you care about, that you are vested in?
Right.
So are you a bowler? Do you want to solve bowlers' problems? Are you a gardener? Do you want to solve gardeners' problems?
Right.
A rock climber?
Oh, I'm having an epiphany right now. I'm a lawyer. Do we care about any?
You do.
I'm joking.
I'm not sure what to say to that, but
Okay. Good point, Rob. Good point.
So do you solve someone's problem and then do you make it about your people? Do you let your people that work with you and help you fulfill this solution to the problem? Do you let their personality come out? Is it all about you? Is it all about the system? Is it all about what you had in your mind of the perfect business? Or do you adapt? I've seen so many businesses fail or not be what they could be because of a lack of humility. Like if you always have to be the smartest person in the room, then you're doing something wrong.
Right.
Like I'm picking up things from you all. I always look at everything as a learning opportunity and can I absorb some things? And pivoting. I mean, you have to be willing to say, okay, this isn't working, or maybe this isn't exactly what I had in mind. So I need to be humble enough to listen, observe, see what's going on, and change. Like feedback is a gift, right?
Yeah, I agree. Well, we don't know that the first couple times that we really mess it up, and it is failure. And we don't realize that in failing, what we thought was failing at that moment was actually a ticket to some type of freedom. Like it was something on the other side. I couldn't own my dad's business because it was a bit messy, especially at that time. And I thought, I'm just going to start my own roofing, siding, windows business. I've been selling this stuff for years, running jobs. I know what to do. And I did. And $500,000 in sales later, I'm like, wow, when do I have time for a family? Like, when do I do the thing that I actually thought I also would do? And then really just felt like, oh man, I failed. But I was like, but I'm closing it. And it wasn't until the other side of it do I realize, like, look what you did. and you didn't die. You didn't lose your marriage. There was still some savings in it. No, I mean, I did fail to sell it. I really should have sold it. I should have wrapped it up in a bow. But I think in that moment, we think that it's failing because we just can't see the other side. One of my mentors said today in a call, out of context, I hope he hears this. He said, when I finally stopped caring and started serving, and he means you'll stop caring about you and how you look. So if I put in a nice little graphic card, it would be stop caring about you, start serving them. Justin.
I don't want to dog my own field too much, but there has been a mentality of self-service in higher ed.
Mm.
But for me, when we got a grantor that just said, go do your thing, and I could just freely give and serve to our campus, our community, our entrepreneurs, it was a game changer for me. It is just so refreshing to just give and serve.
So Rob, tell me, what businesses do you own?
I have a very seasonal business, a garden center. I call myself a flower peddler. It works with my university job really well, the timing of it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I have expertise in it. It's definitely a small business, but I love it. I love that industry. I love the smile you put on people's face. People are like, how much money you make? Like, I know that, of course, because I do the taxes. I mean, you got to be aware of the numbers. But what I really love about it is that it really scratches an emotional itch need for people.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the last few years, to watch people like get rejuvenated, to go outside, to plant a garden, to plant flowers. And I have expertise in it, and I'm good at sourcing products. And then I have a partner who kind of handles the day to day. So that's one business I have. I do a lot of consulting work, do a lot of training and speaking, coaching of small businesses. I dabble in some other things, sports memorabilia, stuff like that.
What's the most difficult thing about owning and managing all these different businesses, even for yourself?
Well, it has to be people. People are complex. Customers are tough. It's funny because in one of my classes, I told them today, I said, hey, we're going to do this exercise Thursday, and you're going to see just how mean you are as a consumer. And it's going to be a little eye-opening for you just how critical and mean-spirited we are as consumers. And you have to answer the call on that. Like, you have to sort out what is noise versus what do I need to listen to improve my troughs in the business, my bad touch points and bad experiences. And then there's the whole employee side of things, which is very difficult. I was very naive the first business I had as far as the different personalities and all that. Then you have sales reps, you have vendors, you have partners, you have all those extraneous groups that you have to learn how to handle people. And you have to first start with yourself. So if I flip that to a positive, if you get really good at, I don't want it to sound too emotionless, but people management, it starts with you. We always start inside and we work out. One of my life passions, and I'm super nerdy about assessment tools. I've co-created an assessment tool, which is elprofile.com. And it really measures your entrepreneurial style, your leadership style, what lens. So that's more for like leaders, leadership teams. And we use that a lot. People really like it. It's a good tool. It's style. It doesn't measure intensity of talent, which Builder Profile 10 can do. I'm certified in like 10 assessments. So I love assessment tools, not to overly label people, but it's a tool to help you understand yourself and then understand like one-on-one relationships, and then understand team relationships, and then understand where you fit in the big picture and how to have healthier relationships and how to complement yourself with people who can make you better and you can make them better. It's kind of that 1 + 1 = 3 type deal. I just think a lot of people don't get this. They want to hold tight. They want to say, this is what I'm really good at. I'm good at everything. And it's like, no, nobody's good at everything. And there's not enough hours in a day to be good at everything anyway, even if you were like to execute. And so what is it that I love to do and I'm good at? What do I not like to do and I'm not very good at? So we always say you could have a really like ethnically diverse team. And then people get really nervous when we say this, like what's coming next? But they all thought and behave the same way. When you hire, you tend to hire clones of yourself.
Right.
So we really talk a lot about cognitive diversity. We want to get different thinking styles in the room together. Yeah. We want to complement. Our co-author ambassador created the ambassador profile when he was at Procter & Gamble 40 years ago. And it really has changed the trajectory of a lot of companies. I mean, Procter & Gamble, Google, Microsoft, we use it daily in our work with students, companies, teams on campus.
And what does that assessment do compared to like yours or even the Gallup one you described earlier? Like, what is that
Yeah.
assessment?
It's a style or a preference tool originally created to measure your creative style. It's 4-quadrant.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like disc profile, the Wiley
Mhm.
version that's 4 quadrants. It has 4 measurements on 2 axes, like 4 scales, 2 measurements. And you really could ask yourself 2 simple questions, kind of gauge, on a continuum where you fall. But what it's evolved to is more innovation style, problem solving style. And we even use it for like your functional preference in work. So what type of work do you prefer to do? What's kind of your ground? What's your turf that you like to play in?
Is that one of the questions?
So it doesn't have questions. It's a word ranking. So you rank 4 words like 20 times,
I see.
and it
Yep.
has 2 measurements going on in those 4 words. So it's pretty complex psychometric.
Yes.
So there's pairings. It's a really good check and balance. It has 40 years of really solid research behind it.
Yeah.
Ambassador was kind enough to give us the technological and the research backbone for our instrument, which is different. I mean, it measures something different, but it's great for team building. So like the 4 styles, I hate to jade you too much because you really should take it, but the generator, so people who are comfortable with ambiguity, they like ideas, they like involving
That's
people.
me. Done.
Conceptualizer, put those ideas together into a plan, strategy, package, big picture thinking.
That's kind of me.
An optimizer who says, hey, we need systems, processes, rules, standards to evaluate things and to make the business sustainable. And then implementers get it done. And so
Right.
they're all important.
Right. And you have probably a bit of all of them in you.
Yeah. This is a nod. Actually, when you take it, there's percentages in each quadrant.
Yes.
So what it's saying, it's a nod to, hey, we're not all of one thing.
Right.
It's just preferences and where you like to spend your energy and time and where you get energy.
Yeah.
Here's something interesting, kind of some emergent research that came out of my dissertation a few years ago. We haven't formally published it yet, but it is in the book. What I found was that generators and conceptualizers, so idea people who had a preference for ideation over evaluation of information. So what does information inspire you to do? Does it inspire you to ideate more or to evaluate, reduce? And so we found that people on the ideation side were more open to starting a business. This is really interesting. Have an ear for it, people out there. So they get more excited about starting a business. Okay. And we need that. That's the activation. That's the problem finding. That's all those kinds of things. But when we did an intervention or a test and we gave people like 2 weeks of ideation training. So like, how can you be more open to ideation? How can you understand what you're encountering and appreciate it for what it is? What we found was that optimizers and implementers became much more interested in starting a business.
Right. Right.
It was like a bing moment for me because we need all those styles in businesses. In startups, we tend to have more idea people, and this isn't a knock on idea people.
Sure. Right.
But my hunch is on long term from a research standpoint, I think there's some connection to failure rates there because we need people who can help us get it done. And we need people who can help us make sense and put it into a system and a process to grow it, to sustain it. And we need it all. What happens when we have front end people who are like, take it too far without help, you get chaos.
Yeah.
So,
Or boredom.
More boredom.
Yeah. Something bigger, something better. The next thing. Yeah.
it becomes mundane. Like, no, it's
Right.
business as usual now. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
I can get a little fatigued by too much systems. I don't like rules. I hate rules.
Okay.
But I'm more of the strategy, the conceptualizer, the planning, the putting pieces together. I like to hand it off to someone who can actually do the detailed systems processes. With me recognizing that, oh, I really missed some things here in my early days. This is how it happened. This was the trigger. Okay. This is crazy. One of my friends on campus said, hey, you should go to this strengths-based leadership training. Okay. So I sign up for Gallup's Clifton Strengths, Strengths Finder training for a week. I'm thinking it's like some kind of leadership training, which it really was, but it's really all about the assessment tool. And it just opened up my world. Like, oh, that's why I can think of all these conflicts.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to diagnose, like we have to interpret problems for clients. And we had another higher ed institution come to us and say, we're having problems with people in general, but with supervisors and expectations. And we moved from a longevity to a merit-based pay increase system. We kind of had to sort through like, what are they really needing? And I came back to them. I said, I think what I'm hearing is we need help building better one-on-one relationships. And they're like, whoa, how'd you get that? And I said, well, because you need coaching relationships. You need people who can coach their people, but then be coached back up the channel. So we did this 2-day training with a leadership group, and it was like mind blowing for us and them. And what they came to realize was, oh, we were losing a lot of valuable like entrepreneurial opportunity, like innovation, because we weren't listening. We weren't even asking. So,
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because even I'm thinking like just because you're, tenured, just because you've been there forever as a department chair or whatever, doesn't mean you're necessarily probably the best person to run that department. And I like the idea that some schools and academia switching to more of a merit base, but on the flip side, like what you're exposing there then is if there's not good coaching there, regardless, it's going to be an issue.
they were being proactive. I mean, they're pretty darn good at what they do, but they're pursuing excellence. I do have one other little story. We have a group that we work with. It's a company that started in Southern Indiana. They still have some operations in Southern Indiana, but they moved a lot of it to Orlando. And they book vacation packages, very crowded space. The independent sales agents kind of been squeezed out of the market. There are exceptions though, and they are one of them. They have 1,700 independent agents. We've worked with them for, 15 years probably. We had them take our entrepreneurial leadership instrument, which it's similar to the Ambassador Profile, but there's some differences. It's what's your entrepreneurial style? What's your leadership style? How do you approach? What's the lens of a venture? How would you approach it? So there's artists, which would be similar to generators, idea people, creatives. There's scientists, so people who like to get in the weeds and perfect something before they send it on. There's builders who want systems processes. That's how they think. Think like Bob Iger at Disney and acquisitions, anything that will build the business up. And then there's evangelists who scream from the rooftops, and they use simple messaging, and it's consistent, and it works with employees and customers and everybody, stock market, you name it. When we did this exercise, we did a workshop with like 300 or 400 of their agents of the 1,700. We kind of went in with these expectations like, oh, I'll bet they're evangelists because they're on social media and they're selling this stuff constantly, and they're selling Disney vacation packages. They're selling Universal, selling Bahamas. So they have to sell. Pretty good assumption, right? I mean, makes
I would
sense.
think so.
Okay.
Based upon the ones that I know that are the Disney vacation planners.
I'm thinking they're storytellers, so wherever that fits in.
That would be evangelists.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wrong.
Oh,
We had the same assumption. So they were scientists. Like
Oh.
70%. My wife does this too. That's her side hustle.
Oh, I love it.
oh, awesome.
So I was talking to her about it, and she was a scientist. And I said, I think I get it, but I want to hear it from you. And she said, we build the perfect package. Like we research it, a lot of energy into it. We ask questions. It's tailored per client. And I said, it makes perfect sense. She said, I looked at you to help me with the copy for social media. Then we started digging further, and we found that these are all side hustle businesses. I mean, some people make really good money, but a lot of them have other jobs or they're a stay-at-home mom. And so they get really good at it. But the other thing they do, they partner with a brother or a sister or a cousin who's the evangelist.
Wow.
Social media, and we'll take all the pictures. Because if you're kind of in the weeds, I have found I struggle to take the time to post on social media sometimes.
Right.
I need someone that's kind of like behind the scenes doing that or on the side doing it. Like, hey, give me a quote here. Give me a one-liner. So that was a really interesting finding. And it just shows that you have to validate your assumptions. You have these hypotheses of what a business is going to be like, and you have to compliment yourself. You have to be humble, but you have to be willing to discover and be wrong. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So all these independent agents that are doing all this travel planning, they needed their Walt Disney. They were the Roys, essentially. They were the behind the scenes building everything, but they needed the Walt to be the face to go out there and still speak it out to existence. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of my colleague and I background is Disney from the corporate innovation standpoint. So we have a book called Entrepreneurship the Disney Way.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a lot of our lens, and we do a lot of Disney training, like especially parks and resorts. How do they do their business? So
we could spend a whole episode on that
I was
alone.
gonna
Just
say,
we bring
we're
you
gonna
both
invite
back
you
for a
back.
Disney.
Because I also
This
need to
is
know the
fun. This is the most
legalese.
This is the most fun podcast I've ever had.
Oh my
You don't let
gosh.
me
Can we
talk
get
too much. I'm used to like, okay, hold on, Robbie. Wait, we need other questions. So the Roy and Walt is a great complementary relationship. I
Mhm.
mean, historically, it would be hard to find a better one. And Disney has a little bit of a history of that. If you look at Eisner,
Mhm.
he was the creative. He was the kind of, hey, we're going to push the boundaries here. But then he had a partner, Frank Wells, who was the president of the company. And he was we need to look at the financials on this. We need to make sure this is doable, viable, that we can handle this. And then Frank Wells, halfway through Eisner's tenure, you know the story, dies in a helicopter crash. Everything changed. They had to bring somebody like Iger on to kind of mop it up. Eisner had done a lot of good things, a lot of good infrastructure. They had parks that needed built out, and Iger came in and did it.
Wow.
So you've written books that have a Disney relation and Disney attorneys by the dozens. They allow that. That's okay. It works out.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. We were a little nervous about that,
Mhm.
and nothing. There's so many books on Disney that I think they view it as kind of free fuel, like free promotion.
Yes. Yes.
Kept it positive.
Yeah, that's the key. I would say, as long as it's going in generally a positive direction.
We wanted to point, like, what are the good things that they did to make this magical thing happen? By the way, that book, we just got the publishing rights back to it. So we're branching it out into 2 separate books.
Okay.
A book on historical view of the entrepreneur, Walt Disney.
Mhm.
And then the second one is like corporate entrepreneurship and innovation in the parks and resorts.
Okay.
And so we're excited about that. Sometimes people are like, you need to focus more on the money. And it's like, I really want it to be a tool for people and a way to impact people. I'm really big on having swum, whatever, in a bureaucracy. I really want to help people get noticed and valued in a big organization. That's kind of a little passion point for me. And then hopefully the tool is that it trains up leaders. It gives them tools to use to bring people along and value their perspective.
Incredible.
Mhm.
Incredible. If someone is building a business, and as I already shared, they should be thinking about the exit at all times,
Mhm.
whether that's a sale, whether that's a transfer to maybe to family, maybe not. Share with us a few thoughts on that.
I've experienced it firsthand. First of all, there's only 2 reasons people buy businesses, in my opinion. One is income replacement. I want to work for myself. It's predictable, so it's close to a franchise. The other reason is, I think I could fix this and multiply it, like grow it. So
Mhm.
turn that small investment into big gains. What I see, and I fell down this trap, people who start down a path of buying a business. Matter of fact, I coached a student last semester on this. She was going to buy a business that she had worked at.
Okay.
And she came to me and said, hey, I want to run this by you. And I said, okay, first off, why? Why are we buying it?
Mhm.
There's 2 reasons, remember? And she said, good point. I said, is the revenue, is it predictable? She's like, I don't know. Without the owner, I'm not sure. Okay. Do you think you can improve it? She said, some. I'm not sure yet. I have everything I need to really grow the business. I said, okay. So a couple of red flags there. Not that you can't buy it, but I said you need to ask more questions and you need to dig into the numbers and why is she selling and what's going on and all those questions.
What kind of business was it?
It was kind of an activity business. Like, for instance, it wasn't this, but it would be like a pottery where you go and
Okay,
you
yeah.
pottery. Experienced, activity based. I'm glad she came to me because here's what happened. And what happened to me is you get so hung up on the idea of buying that business that you make bad decisions. And you make bad decisions because you emotionally get attached to the idea of buying the business. And it's like, wait a minute, time out. I'm losing all ability to look at this from a rational point of view because my emotions are taking over and I'm not evaluating the business in the right way. So it happened to me. It was about to happen to her. She's young enough. It wasn't a big business. Like, she probably would have figured it out, but
Mhm.
it's probably not the best use of her time, talent, energy, you know?
Right. Is there something that you wanted to cover that we didn't cover today?
Here's one thing I'll say we do.
Yeah.
Every event, program, session, everything we do a debrief. And
Mhm.
even if it's 11 o'clock at night, we're tired, we huddle up, whoever was involved, somebody has a notebook,
Yeah.
and we just for like 5 minutes, what went well, what
Mhm.
didn't go so well, what do we want to do differently next time? Because if you don't capture it in the moment, you won't capture it.
Mhm.
Brilliant. What is one of the key lessons you learned as an entrepreneur? Maybe something you find yourself saying again and again?
Just know yourself and know the people around you.
Yeah.
Rob, how would you define entrepreneurial success?
Entrepreneurial success to me is, I think of journey, and I think of learning along the way and helping people solve problems along the way. I think good entrepreneurs find problems and they solve them. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't go so well, but it usually prepares them for the next thing.
Mhm.
Oh, that's so good. And tell me, what's next for you? Do you have a new idea that's already percolating? Maybe you want to share with us?
I think we have really good stuff around customer experience and like customer journey mapping and touch point mapping. And I think it's just something that we need to figure out better how to articulate that we can provide value there. But it's definitely something that's been on my mind lately because, 5 years ago, we had more engaged employees. Customer engagement was a little easier, but you still needed to always search for excellence. But I think now, how many businesses do you walk into, experience, interact with where it's less than stellar?
I mean, it's less
And
than good sometimes.
it's a problem.
Yes.
And sometimes the people that are there are trying their hardest. That's something I think around customer experience is something we've tested it on campus. We've tested it with smaller businesses. And I think we have some good tools for people to use to evaluate their business.
Is it just hanging out at Chick-Fil-A? Because they seem to be doing just fine with it. I was just there. You'll learn it there if you just hang out.
We sat in one of their sessions one time and they came to our business, not this business, but a different one. They came and they spoke. And one of their things was like, it's not go the extra mile. For them, it's go the third mile because nobody's there. Like, it's not like the extra mile's never crowded. It's like the third one's never there. And that's why there's minty mouthwash in the bathroom.
I always tell our students, and we tell a lot of these kind of budding managers, entrepreneurs, leaders, if you pursue excellence, you are going to stand out. It maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you will stand out, especially right now.
You might get fired. I'm just saying. You'll be okay with it. You
Yeah.
really, really will, because you won't be with your people. Where is your favorite place to hang out online if someone wanted to reach out to you?
Probably LinkedIn junkie.
Is it Rob Mathews or is it Robert?
It's Dr. Rob Mathews.
Such a blast getting to know you, my friend. Hey, it's Nicole, and that's the end of the interview. But stick around. This is the part where Matt and I break it all down and give you our favorite takeaways. Listen in. Man, I absolutely loved this interview with Dr. Rob Mathews. How fantastic. The
Yes.
first thing I want to talk about is his reminder of don't hire yourself. There's plenty of assessments out there to make sure that we're not just hiring somebody we like because we like them because they're like us. But even if you don't have a team yet, you can grab an assessment to see if they're a compliment to you, or if you have a larger team and get other people involved in the interviewing process. I thought it was such a good reminder. Like, if you're growing your team this year, don't hire it yourself.
Yes, I'm just thinking about the fact if I just hired myself, then we would just have more stacks of paper everywhere else. Granted, it's 2023 and we are almost paperless for the most part, but we still are a law firm. And so I'm saying to myself, yeah, that would be a bad deal. And then on top of it, it would just be happy hour all the time and just nothing gets done then. Yeah.
What's yours? Number two.
Oh, number two for sure for me would be humility. He went into detail on different aspects of it, but the big one that stuck out for me was the vulnerableness he had to share about being humble about losing the business, like knowing when it was time to put it down, to the point where he said he probably didn't do it. He held on to it too long, right? It sounded like knowing when to say enough's enough, or shoot old yeller, whatever you want to say. It's this idea of it's time to move on from this thing and move on to the next thing. Or, you know what? I did fail, but I learned this from it.
Yeah. One of my mentors recently said to me about stop caring, start serving. And out of context, that sounds terrible, but he meant stop caring about what people are thinking about you or me or whatever, the internal, and instead just start serving them. So I love that. Shout out to Justin. Okay. Last one here.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Rob Mathews is being a disruptor every single day. He's asking questions sometimes when he comes into work in academia on how he's supporting entrepreneurs. But they're doing so because he's saying in this country, just a gap of leadership. This generation isn't doing a great job of bringing up the next generation of leadership. So his organization, the books that they write, the work that they're doing is to really not just hire somebody that's a good performer and up-level them to a leadership role and hope they're prepared, but instead helping prepare them, train them, support them, mentor them.
Yes, definitely. I'll say that his notion that we have done a great job K through 12 creating worker bees, as his terminology stated, is so evident. Look at the job pool. Look at certain people out there. When you try to hire people, look for independent, logical thinkers, progressive thinkers, any of that stuff that sometimes are attributes that go with leadership. It's just not there. And how do they learn it? Well, I don't know about you, but I didn't have a class that said, here's how you become a progressive thinker in high school. Here's strategy 101. No one taught that. It has to come from other things you're doing and hopefully some mentorship and people who are doing it in front of you.
Yes, I love it. Well, you know what we say, folks, if you're listening,
Keep listening.